Catan is a wonderful board game for all of the family. Players are competing against each other to gather some resources and then use those resources to build some roads, villages and cities. When you build villages and cities, you have two main benefits. Firstly, you gain some victory points which you need in order to win the game, and secondly, it makes it easier for you to gain more resources in the future. The first player to reach 10 victory points is the winner. That's a very brief overview. In this video though, I'm going to go through the rules in much more detail. So strap in, get comfortable, because this is how to play. We start as always by setting up. First, you're going to want to build this hex perimeter by putting the jigsaw pieces together, and then you're going to want to place the hexes within the bigger hex in the middle. The rules recommend that you have it set up like this, as in you have the hexes in these positions when you're playing for the first time, but when you're comfortable in the rules, you can switch as many of these around as you like. Then you're going to want to put these number tokens on the hexes. Again, the rules recommend that you start like this, but when you're comfortable in the game, you can place them out randomly. You will also want to prepare 6 piles of cards, 5 for the different types of resources, and then 1 pile of cards for the development cards. Also give each player the cities, villages, and road tokens in their corresponding colour. You'll notice that the 5 different types of resource card correspond to certain tiles on the board. That is no coincidence, and we'll get into how they're connected later on. Next, each player will take it in turns to place a village at an intersection between the hexes, and then also place a road that is in some way linked to the village that they've just placed. Players take it in turns doing that twice each. Do note that when you place a village, then nobody else can place a village adjacent to it. So this place, and this place are then unavailable for other people to put villages on. Even me, I can't put that village there. Basically, a village needs space around it. The way it's going to work is that players will start their turns by throwing 2 dice. Then you add up the numbers on them, and then you find the numbers on the board. So in this case, I've rolled a 5 and a 1, that makes 6. Here we have a tile with a 6 on it, and then basically everybody with a village or city that is connected to this tile gets one of these resources. So in this case, the orange player, the red player, and the blue player would be taking one of these brick resources. You'll notice that for number 11, so let's say I rolled an 11, then the orange player has actually got 2 villages next to it. In that case, the orange player will be taking 2 of the wood resource cards. Had I, on the other hand, had a city which are denoted by the slightly bigger tiles, then I would be getting 2 of that resource. So if I've rolled an 11, then the orange player here would be getting 2 of the sheep resource, and the blue player would be getting 1 of the sheep resource. Do bear in mind here that you gain resources even when it's not your turn. Doesn't matter who it is that rolled the 11, everybody with a village or city adjacent to this 11 will be gaining that resource. When it's your turn, you start by rolling the dice, and then players get resources as I've just described. But you've probably worked out that since you're throwing 2 dice, some of these numbers are much more likely to come up than others, and therefore some of the resources are much more likely to get into your hands than others. So the next part of your turn is that you can make some trades. Quite simply, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. One is quite simply that you ask other players, you say, hey, I have this lovely wheat, would anybody swap me this for a brick? Or you could offer them 2 wheat, or 1 wheat and 1 sheep, 1 wheat and something else. Basically, whatever the players can agree amongst themselves. The only caveat there is that when it's my turn, I have to be involved in the trade. The two other players can't trade with each other when it's my turn. They would have to wait for one of their turns to do that. But if nobody you're playing with wants to make that trade with you, there are other things you can do, and there are a couple of ways that you can trade with the bank. One option that you always have is that if you have 4 cards of the same resource, you can trade them for any resource that you like with the bank. Bear in mind they have to be 4 of the same resource that you trade for 1 of something else. But there are other ways in which you can make that deal slightly cheaper. Let's have a look at that. You'll notice along the board that there are some of these harbours that have the little bridges on them. Basically, if you have a village or a city on either of these 2 spaces, bear in mind you can't have one on both of them, but if you have a village or a city on either of them, you can trade with the bank at a ratio of 3 to 1. That basically means I can give 3 resources to the bank in order to take any one of my choosing. The final way you can trade, if you look at the blue player here, they have a village right next to one of these harbours, but it has a ratio of 2 to 1 and a picture of a sheep. Basically, the blue player can always trade 2 of the sheep cards for any one resource that they want from the bank. Bear in mind, here it has to be sheep cards that he's trading 2 of, whereas at this one where you can trade 3 to 1, it can be 3 of any resource whatsoever. The only other caveat when it comes to trading is it has to be a trade. You can't simply give somebody else some cards. I don't really know why you'd want to do that because it is a competitive game, but the rules make that pretty clear, so I wouldn't be doing this video justice if I didn't point that out. As well as trading, you are more than welcome to build on your turn. One of the things you can build is a road, and that will cost you 1 wood and 1 brick resource. Bear in mind that with roads you have to build them connected to an existing road in your colour or an existing village or city. You can't basically just build a road in a random new place. It all has to be adjoining. You could also build a village. That will cost you 1 wood, 1 brick, 1 wheat and also 1 sheep. Bear in mind again, as I said earlier, that villages cannot be closely adjoined to another place with a village on. Basically, a village can only have empty spaces next to it. And again, when you're building a village, it has to be at the end of a road in your colour. The other thing you can build on your turn is a city. A city will always take the place of where a village settlement used to be. And upgrading a village to a city will cost you 2 wheat and 3 ore resources. Do bear in mind that for each village you have, you gain 1 victory point, and for each city you have, you gain 2 victory points. And it's the first player to reach 10 victory points that is the winner. Another thing you can do on your turn is to buy a development card. They, broadly speaking, look like this, and they will cost you a wheat, an ore, and a sheep. Then simply take the top card from the face down development card pile. Development cards come in 3 different shapes and sizes, generally speaking. Here they are in Swedish, I do apologise for that, but of course they do the same thing in your native language as well. One type is quite simply that it gives you a point. Again, it's the player that first gets 10 victory points that is the winner, so you might be lucky enough to pick up a victory point from the development deck. This type of card would allow you to take 2 resources from the bank of any type of resource that you like. So if you're particularly low on something, then that allows you to take 2 resources from the bank. And finally, this card here is a knight. That allows you to move the robber tile to a hex of your choice, and then you can actually steal a resource from a player that has a village or a city along that hex. So I think what this is telling me is that I need to inform you guys more about the robber tile. I should just say quickly, by the way, that when you buy a development card, you cannot play it in the same turn that you just bought it. So if I've just bought this card, I'd have to wait till my next turn before I can play it. The robber is this token here that starts on the desert hex in the middle of the board. You'll notice this hex doesn't have any resources on it and also doesn't have a number for your dice roll. Basically, whenever somebody rolls a 7, you'll notice that there aren't any 7s anywhere across the board. But what happens when you roll a 7 is a player will take the robber tile, or the robber token I should say, and place it on a different hex. And basically then, whenever anybody rolls a 6, the red and the orange player do not receive the brick resource for this 6. Basically, the robber takes that resource away from them before they even get it. Also, when you place this robber here, you get to go to either the red player or the orange player in this case, and basically take a resource from their hand and keep it for yourself. You can basically steal a resource from them. Then when the next player rolls a 7, they get to move the robber somewhere else, etc. The other thing that happens when somebody rolls a 7 is that any player who has at least 7 resource cards in their hand has to take half of them, rounded down, and then discard them. Again, that's half rounded down, so if I have 7 resource cards, I take 3 of them and discard them. Finally, there are 2 other ways in which you can score points. You could get this tile here by being the first player to play 3 of the knight development cards. Then, if another player comes along and plays 4 of the knight development cards, they take this marker from you. This marker is worth 2 victory points. Finally, the longest road marker is given to the player who has, you guessed it, the longest road. This is also worth 2 points. In this case, it would be the orange player who has a road of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 connecting orange pieces. However, if the red player were to choose to build a settlement here, then suddenly the orange road is no longer connected, and this tile worth 2 points would then be passed from the orange player to the red player. And in a nutshell, that is how you play Catan. You roll the dice, you get the resources, you build roads, you build villages, you build cities in order to gain more resources and score victory points. It's a really, really good game. I have a review video coming next week, should be out. And yeah, subscribe so you don't miss that one. But in the meantime, good luck. I hope you enjoy Catan. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.